My name is Bruno Bianchi Sarcone. I run Spenguru.es and this is the Spanish Digital Nomad Visa webinar. Today is October 16th, 2025, and we're going to go through a presentation with updates. I just updated the presentation for today's webinar with new slides, with new information, important information, especially on the Social Security contributions for Autónomos. Important news. And after the presentation, I'm going to go through the questions and answers. So you can ask your questions in the chat box in the bottom right corner of your screen anytime. Make sure to add a question mark at the end of your questions. And then after the presentation, I can go through all of them and answer them. Okay? Now, let's start. First, a little bit about Spenguru.es. Our objective is facilitating the relocation process for English-speaking foreigners to Spain since 2014. We have wonderful reviews out there on Trustpilot and on Google, almost 5 stars. And you can use Spenguru.es for absolutely free. We have a weekly newsletter where I feature the top discussions on social media, investigation blog post, most watched video of the week, and featured partners, and a YouTube channel with more than 1,000 videos and more than 7,000 subscribers, also free. Blog with more than 2,000 articles for free. You can join Spenguru's community with an aggregated total of 150,000 members total, from which the most relevant group is the Spanish Digital Nomad Visa Facebook group with 18,000 members that I highly recommend you joining today. But if you want expert advice, and I have put in bold letters, immigration experts and tax advisors. Why in bold letters? Because I think even before taking the decision of moving to Spain, I would highly, highly recommend you at least having a 1-hour consultation with an immigration expert and with a tax advisor. At least with those two. It's really, really money well invested, okay? Because they can tell you the right strategies for a short, medium, and long term of coming to Spain. But then also, you have other very interesting partners that have personally vetted, like financial planners, okay, for cross-border tax implications and wealth management, and visa-compliant health insurance, medical certificates, sworn translations. You will need that for the application of your visa, apostille services in the US and UK, and other services like opening bank accounts, money transfer services, property rentals, mortgages, etc. All those personally vetted by me, and I would say like 99% of my partners. I have recommended them for more than 2 years, so they stood the test of time. I added this slide because a lot of people send me messages after the webinar and later on the week, and they ask me like, look, maybe I just don't want a tax advisor. I just want someone to file my Autónomo, okay, my contractor filings, okay, or darme de alta, okay, start my Autónomo. Well, you do that just by engaging with my recommender gestores or tax accountants in Spain. So you go to services, tax advice, Spain filings, tax accountants in Spain, or gestores, and there you can find 3 of them, okay, with discount codes, etc., etc. And for example, I personally use TaxDown, okay, for my Autónomo declaration. Now let's talk about the webinar objectives, okay? Hopefully you will understand this after the end of this webinar. Key changes of the DNV in 2025, step-by-step requirements, documentation. We're going to talk about taxes and social security, renewal process, and how to avoid common mistakes and delays in your application. This is the way it's structured. It's a timeline with objectives, terminology, the update requirements, checklist, taxes and social security, and renewal. Let's talk about the terminology, okay? Because we're going to mention these words, jargon, many times during the presentation. UGE, Unidad de Grandes Empresas. This is the government office that processes the DNV, okay? So you're dealing with that office when you apply for the DNV in Spain, okay? If you do it from abroad, it's the consulate that is in contact with the UGE. Then you have the apostille. An apostille is a legalization of a document, so it is valid for Spanish authorities, okay? So if you use a foreign document like FBI background check from the US, You need to apostille it with a federal apostille, okay? And that will make it valid if you submit it to Spanish authorities, okay? The apostille only work for countries that are part of the Hague Convention. For example, United Emirates is not part of the Hague Conventions. There are other ways to legalize those documents. Sworn translators, okay? These are special translators. These are appointed translators by the Spanish Ministry of Foreign Affairs who have a valid signature, an electronic signature. You don't need to send, physical documents to them. You can just scan documents, send them by email, and then they will send you back digital documents that have their stamps on with their sworn translations that you print out and you submit, okay? Or you submit electronically, okay? And those are absolutely valid, right? So these are special sworn translators, and of course you can find them on spaingov.es as well. Autónomo. Autónomo is a freelancer or contractor in Spain, okay? And this is how they call, the tax authorities and social security authorities call them autónomos, right? Then there is certificate of coverage, or A1, okay? Certificate of coverage of social security in your origin country. For example, if you're applying as an employee working for a company abroad, you need also to supply a certificate of coverage stating that you're paying social security in your home country, okay? For the UK, it's A1. In the States, in United States, certificate of coverage. Then there is the padrón or empadronamiento. This is a proof of address that is issued by the city hall in the city where you live, okay? You obtain it by showing your rental contract or an authorization from the owner of the property, okay? Not all the rental contracts are work for getting the empadronamiento, okay? But the empadronamiento, in 99% of cases, will be requested, for example, by police authorities to prove your address in order to issue the tarjeta de identidad extranjero or residency card. We mentioned the TIE or tarjeta de identidad extranjero. This is the plastic card, okay, that shows your immigration status, okay? It says your name, it shows your NIE, which is different from the TIE. NIE is the number of foreigner that you have, is the number, and the TIE is the plastic card, okay? So it shows your face, shows your NIE number, it shows start date and expiration date, okay, and your residency type, and whether you have permit to work or not. All right, let's go with the updates for 2025. So this is a pretty recent visa type. The DNV started in 2023, so 2 years only. This is not a very long time compared to other visas. Very important in news is that W-2 employees from the United States are now eligible for this kind of visa. Okay. At the beginning, they were eligible. Then several months, their certificate of coverage was not accepted by Spanish authorities, but now it appears that it is accepted, right? So W-2 employees from the U.S. companies working remotely from Spain are eligible now for this visa. But in order to obtain the certificate of coverage, you must apply for it via your employer, okay, supplying the U.S. company details, showing proof of remote arrangement, okay? And then you finish the certificate of coverage process, right? And you submit it in your application, and that will avoid Spanish Social Security contributions, right? Who may not qualify? Self-employed or S-Corp owners often don't meet the Social Security's US-based business criteria, and owning more than 25% of a company can trigger legal or tax issues in Spain. Have that in mind. And this is a step-by-step process on how to obtain the certificate of coverage in the States. As I said, your company has to start doing it, you finish it, and then you receive it. It takes 4 to 8 weeks to obtain, so plan accordingly. More changes. What's different now? Well, more documents will require apostilles. Okay, so many people who applied for this visa before didn't have to obtain apostilles for certain documents, and now for the renewals, they will have to. So be careful, plan accordingly. Okay, and especially company certificates will require this kind of legalization. The stricter checks for business owners to prove that the company has real activity. Okay, it's not a zombie company. And professional experience must be backed by official evidence, and everything has to match perfectly. Another thing worth mentioning is that it is pretty clear who is eligible for the special tax regime, also called the Beckham Law, that has the wonderful perk of paying an effective tax rate of 24% only of coming from employment income, okay, and many other advantages, right? And the 99% of cases, only employees and not contractors will be eligible for the special tax regime. Otherwise, you would have to go under the ordinary or general tax regime. Another thing worth mentioning is that even though UGE, when you apply from Spain, is much more streamlined than applying from any consulate abroad, still their decisions are pretty inconsistent, so you have to be prepared to adapt, reapply, etc. And now renewals are treated nearly the same as new applications. Okay, so you have to be very organized and plan accordingly, obtain all the documentation so that your renewal is done on time. Now, we mentioned that they are requiring more apostilles, more documentation, everything has to match perfectly. And we mentioned that company registration certificates must now be apostilled. Tax or social security reports used as work proof require also apostilles. More certificates, marriage, birth, or civil partnership certificates, if applicable, need apostille. They always need it, okay? But let's put it all together here in the list. Documents from outside of Spain, as I said before, if they're issued by authorities who are not Spanish, right? They will need to be legalized or apostilled, okay? And the translations for these documents must be sworn translations, okay, for official certificates, right? But for example, for your curriculum, your CV, you don't need a sworn translation. It's normal with a, let's say, ordinary translation or general translation using ChatGPT or any translator, right? Now, if you're a business owner, be prepared or expect more questions and more scrutiny. Authorities will now require proof that your company is active and legitimate, okay? And this is in order to avoid cases of people who bought off-the-shelf companies or inactive companies, right? So you may need to submit company tax returns, invoices and contracts, proof of business expenses or investment, evidence of clients and services delivered. They want to see that the company is actively operating. If your company has your name or is family-owned, more scrutiny. And for small self-owned companies, provide proof of ownership, activity, and client relationships. So all this is increasing, the control is increasing by UGE. Now, when proving work experience, when you don't have a degree and you have to show at least 3 years of relevant experience, this is what's expected. A detailed letter from former employers or clients where you outline your roles, responsibilities, and dates. Everything has to match. Official proof is required. Now, depending whether you're applying as an employee working for another company or as a freelancer, depending on that, expert immigration lawyers, okay, who apply for this visa will choose different documentations to make it look official, right? For example, supplying social security records, okay, coming from the UK, HMRC, from the US, SSA 750, or detailed report from your current or past companies, 1099s forms, tax documents, okay, P60s in the UK, 1099s in the States, and invoices and bank statements, okay, tied to your freelance work. All supporting documents must match your CV and current job role, okay? So this is important that everything matches and it is backed by official government documents. So we mentioned that at the beginning, there were many headlines saying like, oh, if you apply for the digital nomad visa, you will enjoy a 24% flat rate for 5 or 6 years. But as we said, only if you're an employee, or 0.99% of cases, only if you're an employee working for a company abroad, not a freelancer, you may be eligible for this special tax regime, right? Now, also, have in mind that if you are making less than 60,000 euros of taxable income per year, this special tax regime may not be that advantageous to you. And in fact, the general regime may be better, okay? because this special tax regime has pros and cons. Very nice pros, but also some cons. For example, there is additional administrative burden. There are no allowances or deductions. For example, if you have kids, okay, if you have family, right, and if you're making less than that, maybe the tax brackets, the progressive tax brackets from the general tax regime may be more advantageous if you make this less than 60,000 euros per year. So always good to check with a experienced tax advisor who can run a tax simulation, okay, for you, so you can compare the different scenarios. Also, eligibility is for people working for a company that they don't own, okay? And if you don't fall into the eligibility of the special tax regime, Beckham Law, you will fall into the standard progressive income tax rates under the general tax regime. If you are self-employed, remember, not only you will pay income tax, but also you will have to pay social security contributions in Spain, okay, to the Spanish social security. We're going to go through all that in the special part of this presentation for taxes and social security contributions. We mentioned that UGE can be a bit erratic at best, okay, so what to expect? Requirements and interpretations can vary between caseworkers. So depending who's reviewing your case, you may receive a decision or a different one. And I've seen cases of people who applied, got denied, reapplied again without changing a single comma in their files and got accepted. Okay, and they got their visas. This has happened. Okay, rejections may happen even with strong applications, so it's never 100% sure you're gonna get the approval. And in case you get a denial, everyone recommends to reapply if you can, if you have days left, rather than appealing a decision. Okay, appealing a decision can take months. Okay, and reapplication is the standard procedure, okay, for applying, which is 20 working days, okay, that you have to get a decision, and they're quite strict about this. So timing matters. Decision around holidays also may be stricter or rushed, okay, and this happens because there is less staff in their offices, and less people working, and they have the same amount of work or workload, so the decisions may be a little bit even more erratic because there's less people for more workload. Now let's go into the official requirements. Those were the updates for 2025, okay? And now we're gonna go to the official requirements for this visa and start with eligibility criteria for the DNV. First of all, financial requirements: earn at least 2,600 to 2,763 per month, okay? So a lot of people talk about 2,763 per month euros, okay? But the law says 2,600 euros, okay? And the difference for this threshold comes because it is based on the minimum salary in Spain, okay? Whether it is paid on a 14 pays per year basis or whether you calculate it on a 12 monthly payments per year, right? So some people, just to be on the safe side, will tell you that you need to make at least 2,763 euros. But if you make 2,600 euros, you are also within the law, right? And this is before tax and expenses, okay? So it's gross numbers. You also have to prove that you work remotely for a non-Spanish company and you have clients abroad with maximum 20% of your income coming from Spanish clients. You have to have either a university degree for a relevant role or at least 3 years of relevant professional experience. You will have to provide a clean criminal record for the past 5 years, whatever you were living. If you were living in 5 countries in those previous 5 years, you have to provide criminal records from all those countries. Prove that your employer or clients have existed for at least 1 year, and confirm that your work is performed remotely using digital tools. So not any kind of work is eligible for this type of visa. So we mentioned this is the calculation, let's say the most conservative calculation for the minimum financial threshold for applying for this visa. So one applicant, 2,763 euros per month. And if you add a dependent, it goes to 3,800 euros. If you add one kid, little over 4,000 euros. And if you are having 2 kids, 4,500 euros, more or less, round numbers. There you can see the calculation and the explanation on top on how you get to these numbers, okay? Remember, these amounts are gross, and if you're also self-employed, income must be shown before deducting the costs, okay? Before. Savings may help support your case, but they never can replace consistent income. This is a visa that needs to be obtained with active income, mainly, right? And the income must be documented through contracts, pay slips, invoices, and bank statements. We mentioned that maximum 20% must come from Spain. Can come from Spain. So 100% of your income can come from outside of Spain, okay? But if you have certain income from Spain, maximum 20%. Checklist, what you need to submit, okay? You'll need a signed letter from your employer, okay? You'll need to submit a contract, ideally without a fixed end date. Why is this? Because if you submit a contract without a fixed end date and you apply from Spain, they will give you the visa for 3 years, okay? If your contract ends before those 3 years, that will be the end also of your visa approval period, okay? So if your contract is only 1 year, they will give you 1 year. If you apply from a consulate with a fixed end date contract, maximum is 1 year. So that's one of the advantages of applying from Spain, right? Last 3 months of stamped or signed personal bank statements, last 3 months of pay slips or invoices, company certificate now with apostille, minimum 1 year of existence of this company, this is important, proof of qualifications, okay, or 3 years of relevant experience. We said there's 2 ways, university degree versus experience, criminal background checks, okay, private health insurance in some cases. When you are not paying Social Security anywhere, you will need a private health insurance that complies with residency requirements. Okay. And also we're going to talk about something very special about this later on. Passport application form, payment receipt, photo, and each document, official certificates I'm talking about, they must be sworn translated and apostilled or legalized when not possible, so that they are valid when you apply at Spanish institutions, okay, like UGE or the consulates. Now, applying as an employee, W-2 in the States, we're going to talk about certificate of coverage. So if you're applying, if you're working for a company in the States or the UK or Canada, your employer must confirm your remote status and your job duties. And you will need the certificate of coverage, as we said, COC or A1, okay, to prove that you're paying Social Security in your home country, right? And remember that normally this process to obtain this certificate must be started by your employer, okay? If you are unable to supply a certificate of coverage from your origin country, then there is the option that your employer opens a company in Spain and pays Social Security in Spain for you, and you are still an employee, or you become an autónomo or a contractor, okay? Now, optional, some experts say that they also supply, to make the application stronger, a signed letter confirming that your job doesn't impact Spain's labor market, okay? Now, if you are in a position in which you have the option to apply as an employee or as a contractor, well, it's important to notice that there are pros and cons for both, okay? Here's a table where I talk about 10 comparison points between the employee providing a certificate of coverage or self-employed becoming an autónomo in Spain, okay? You can read all this comparison later on, maybe when I share with you the recording of this webinar, but it's pretty interesting, okay? But generally, not everyone has the versatility or possibility to apply for those 2 positions, okay? But definitely consider consulting with an immigration expert if you're in this situation to understand the implications of both. Now, let's talk about how to obtain the certificate of coverage in US, UK, Canada, and other countries. In the UK, it's the SSA 101. and 102 forms. Okay, and Canada requests a certificate of coverage from Service Canada. If you're working for EU companies, EEA companies, okay, associate countries, or UK's A1 form, okay, and it's important, the certificate of coverage must cover the full duration of your initial visa. So depending how also when your certificate of coverage expires, they will issue the visa duration. Okay, for example, in the UK, it's normal that they give you 2 years, right? So you won't be able to get a visa for more than 2 years because your certificate of coverage only covers for 2 years, right? If it expires, you may have to register as self-employed in Spain. Okay, this is one of the pathways, or follow different other pathways. Okay, this is an official document, so it's important that it's apostilled and sworn translated. Employers paying Social Security in Spain. Is this a viable option? Yes, it is a viable option, but it's a complex and often costly process that many companies are unwilling to do. Okay, so opening, a company from abroad, you convince them to open a company in Spain so that they start paying Social Security. I can tell you, not many cases out there. Several companies, they have already companies in Spain because they were already operating. So this could be a possibility, or intra company transfer, also different type of visa. Okay, so there are pros and cons for both. But in general, the option will be to decide to become a contractor. Okay, so switching to self-employed status, right, will avoid this requirement entirely. Okay, so that's a common pathway, people becoming contractors. Now, if you become a contractor or self-employed, becoming an autónomo in Spain, how and when you register, right? So it depends also whether you got your digital nomad visa from a Spanish consulate abroad, or you travel to Spain as a tourist and you get your visa from Spain. It's a bit different timings, right? At some point, you will need to register yourself as autónomo, okay, and start paying Social Security and your taxes in Spain, right? By paying taxes, I'm talking about that you have to pay your annual taxes, but also start paying on a quarterly basis, okay, filing and paying, okay, income tax and VAT, right? VAT is not a huge deal because usually you will be working with customers abroad and you will not charge them Spanish VAT. Therefore, you won't have to pay VAT back, okay, to the authorities, okay? So, but still, you need to file. So, it's important that, for example, if you enter Spain to apply for the digital nomad visa, don't register as autónomo, okay, before you get your visa, right? So you enter Spain, you apply for the visa, you get your visa, and then you register as autónomo before you get your TA card. We're going to talk about that, right? So, but if you obtain your digital nomad visa from a consulate abroad and you enter during the visa validity date, you will have up to 30 days to register as autónomo, okay? The law says you have to register as autónomo as soon as possible, depending on the two options, right? So we mentioned that if you become an autónomo, you will pay Social Security contributions that start at 80 euros the first year. Some comunidades autónomas or regions, there are 17 regions in Spain, will pay you back if you request it the first year. So you will pay 80 euros per month the first year. That's 1,000 euros. You can request it in the second year to get that 1,000 euros back. Okay, this is Madrid and Andalusia, for example. Okay, that happened to me. I live in Andalusia, in Malaga. I got my first year paid because I requested it. Okay, that is called Cuota Cero. And I don't know if there are other regions who also have this scheme. But then on the second year, depending on how much you made the first year, you will start paying Social Security contributions that are progressive and range. They have different ranges depending on the income that you had the previous year, right? And important, okay? A lot of people ask, is it difficult to file taxes and Social Security in Spain? And I'm telling you, I've been here since 2004. I am a native Spanish speaker. I have run companies and businesses and everything. And I can tell you, I prefer to pay a tax accountant to do it because it is a mess. Okay, it is a mess. It is very difficult. Okay, but if you have a straightforward situation, it is a simple situation. My situation was never simple for whatever reason. But some people say like, oh, my situation is straightforward. I have only one job. It's very easy, but I want to do it myself. Perfect. Go ahead. But the moment in which your situation is a little bit less straightforward, I'm telling you, it's a rabbit hole. So definitely go with experts. Okay. And yes, of course, you can find them on spenguru.es. Okay, those tax accountants. We mentioned that you have to register as soon as possible as Autónomo. Okay, if that's the pathway that you will follow. And big question: do I need a physical TA card to register as Autónomo, or can I register directly after the digital Nomad visa approval? Right? And I published an article about this, and that's why it's important to follow Spenguru, because I always update you about news and things that you need to know, okay, about the situation, because things are evolving all the time, okay? Very important. You don't need your TA card or residency card to register as Autónomo. Not only you don't need it, it is highly unlikely that you will get your TA card fast enough because of lack of appointments at national police stations and foreign offices. Okay, many gestores or tax accountants are not aware of this. Okay, and that can be very, very bad for you. Right, so you need to work with gestores that are used to work with digital nomads. Okay, because unfortunately, people are not updated as much as we will wish. Okay, and also gestores here, tax accountants, are not responsible for your filings. You are ultimately the responsible person. Okay, this is different from other countries where CPAs are responsible for what they file in your name, but here it's not like that. They will help you. They will blah blah, blah, etc., and they will give you the filings ready, etc. But then you are the responsible person if they made a mistake. This is the situation in Spain. Okay, so yes, register as Autónomo before getting your TA card, okay? And potentially, and I highly recommend you, because this is my personal experience, I registered as Autónomo without using a gestor, and I did a complete mess. Honestly, I did a complete mess, okay? I did it with the advice of friends who are Autónomos and everything, and I'm telling you, it is so easy to make mistakes, and those are costly mistakes that can bring you audits, okay, from the tax authorities very quickly. Now everything is automated, so be careful, right? Do it right, in my opinion. Like, I can't underline this enough. Can a criminal record affect your application? And yes, of course. Okay, depending on the severity of your criminal record, okay, it can actually become a denial. Okay, you must provide a criminal record certificate for every country you lived in the past 5 years. Even minor offenses can trigger delays or rejections, even. What the authorities will look for is serious criminal convictions like fraud, drug-related offenses, or even repeated offenses, okay, or blood conviction time offenses. And in some cases, older or minor infractions may be overlooked, okay? Like I've heard like driving under the influence 10 years ago, stuff like that, or smoking pot, okay, 10 years ago, can be overlooked, okay? But if you have records, go with an immigration expert who can help you frame it correctly, okay? Potentially, if it's a serious crime offense, go through expungement processes if enough time has passed, okay, so that your records are clean. And you will also sign a declaration confirming no pending criminal charges, right? So that you didn't do anything wrong in between you are submitting your criminal records and when you are submitting, okay? Like any other official certificate, this will need to be apostilled by the authorities that issued them. For example, FBI background check, federal apostille in the States, ACRO in the UK authorities, okay, etc. Now, remember that after this presentation, there's a Q&A session at the end, but some people may need to leave earlier for some reason, maybe to work. And I highly respect it. But if you think that the information that I shared with you today is valuable and you want to help others find this content, please leave a review on Trustpilot. There's a button there on the top bar, on the green bar, that will redirect you to Trustpilot. It only takes 5 seconds to leave a review there. And let's be honest, it also motivates me a lot to hear nice words, nice and kind words. I really, really appreciate it. This is an absolutely free webinar. So it really, really makes me happy to read those words and continue doing and creating content. Let's move. Do you need a degree? There are alternatives, as we said. Okay, one option is a university diploma in a relevant field. Okay, again, legalized and officially translated. But not all the diplomas count. They have to be graduate or postgraduate level and from recognized institutions. Okay, and also the studies must be relevant to your current role or job. The option 2, 3 years of professional experience directly related to the remote work you will be doing in Spain. Okay, and must be supported, as we said, by documents from employer or client letters, social security or tax reports. Okay, that's important. And invoices, contracts, and proof of services delivered. Okay, everything has to clearly align and match. How you prove freelance or contract experience? You submit a detailed CV, okay, that can be translated with normal translation, doesn't need a sworn translator, saving some bucks there. Include client letters confirming work history, scope, and timelines, okay? And as we said, official documents from Social Security, tax filings, invoices, depending on how and where you are applying from, okay? There will be one document on another, okay? And this is where receiving help from experienced professionals, experience in this specific visa type, which is a quite new visa, okay, a specific visa, is important. And of course, you can find it on Springboard.es. It's good to be organized and show your documents in a, let's say, rational way. Okay, so you have to organize those documents, maybe potentially by client or by year, for clarity to help the official review in your documents. It's important that everything is consistent, everything matches. Okay. Can you bring family? All right, let's talk about the rules about bringing spouses and partners. You can include spouse or legally registered partner, okay, and children under 18. Adult children and parents? Yes, you can. We're going to talk about the different scenarios, okay? But focusing on partner or spouse, you must provide a marriage or civil partnership certificate, new copy, okay, because it has a certain validity period that can range depending 3 months or 6 months, or whatever is stated on the certificate itself. That must be apostilled by the authorities who issue it. Okay, for example, marriage in California state apostille. Okay, you were married in Cyprus, apostille in Cyprus. Okay, and sworn translated if not in Spanish. You married in Colombia, certificate is in Spanish. You don't need to sworn translate it, but you will need to apostille it. Okay, proof of shared finances and cohabitation in case of unmarried couples. Okay. For registered couples, like legal couples, that's great. But if you are not registered, okay, it is called pareja de hecho or stable couples. You have to make the case that you're a couple, okay, by providing documents proving that you were cohabitating for at least 1 year or you have children together, okay, and you will show lease agreements, joint bills, shared bank accounts, etc. You make your case, okay, to prove that you are a couple. Now, if you bring children, adult children, okay, or dependents or elderly parents, so minor children, this is the common case. Birth certificate, okay, again, new copy of the original certificate, apostilled and strong translated. Proof of financial support and school plans is helpful, okay. And for adult children, so your children that are over 18 years old but under 26, okay, you must show full-time studies, financial dependence, proof of living with parents, that they didn't marry, okay, they're single. And adult children that are over 26, only allowed if they're medically or incapably dependent, okay, and for this, you need to provide documentation that proves it, okay. Adopted children include a court ruling confirming legal guardianship or adoption, and parents or parents-in-law. Parents must prove real, stable financial and physical dependence, such as full support via bank transfers or medical dependencies. So you have to prove that they depend on you, okay? Not just that, oh, this is my parent, that's it. No, you need to prove that you have been sending money to your parent, etc., etc. Okay, and further documentation. So it's important that you prepare your case if you're applying with all this dependents, and of course, the financial threshold goes up. Okay, with more dependents, there's more financial threshold per month or per year, right? Now, there's some timing issues here. If you're bringing children, adult dependents, or elderly parents, okay? If family members apply later, okay, not with the main applicant, extra documentation is required. And if you are applying as a self-employed, you must be fully registered as Autónomo before they can apply. And this can take time. So be careful with that. Let's circle back to the need of private health insurance. If you're paying Social Security, okay, in Spain, or you provide a valid certificate of coverage in your home country, then you're fine. You don't need health insurance, right? But in any other case in which you're not covered by Social Security in any of the two countries, okay, then you will need a private health insurance that mimics the public healthcare sector coverage. Okay, if you register as self-employed as an autónomo in Spain and you start paying Social Security contributions, you will be covered by the Spanish public healthcare system. Okay, therefore you don't need a private health insurance. But we're going to talk about that. Okay, there's a big but there. Now, if you need private health insurance, if you're not in either of these cases, health insurance, in order to be compliant, needs to be provided by a company authorized to operate in Spain, has no co-payments or deductibles, offers full coverage in Spain, and is valid for the entire duration of your visa, at least 1 year. Okay. So, important, okay? If your aim is to stay in Spain for the longer term, okay, and potentially going for the long-term residence permit after 5 years of legal residency in Spain, remember that in order to be eligible for this long-term residency permit, you need to comply with several requirements. These requirements are minimum stay requirements, an uninterrupted legal residency, and an uninterrupted health coverage. And this is huge, okay? The minimum stay requirements. You cannot be outside of Spain more than 10 months in the previous 5 years, roughly, okay? This is the thing. If you apply from Spain for a digital nomad visa, the day that you get your visa granted is when you start your residency in Spain, okay? So if you didn't have a health coverage when your visa is granted, and then time passes until you get your Autónomo, okay, your Social Security registration, that is a gap in health coverage. Therefore, when you apply for your long-term residency later on, they will see that there was a gap there. So be careful. If you're planning to stay long-term, and you want all those days to count for the 5 years to become eligible later on for the long-term residency, it's important that you are covered by a compliant health insurance during that gap. Okay, so plan accordingly. Now, you can find a compliant health insurance exclusive agent recommendation on SpainGuru.es. I work with Carlos Blanco. He's a wonderful person and a great professional because he's also an expert immigration lawyer who understands this process perfectly. He also can offer several good things that others can't, like start date extension, so you don't pay for months that you haven't used, okay? And he provides probably the most cost-effective, most value for money healthcare coverage in Spain, which is Adeslas, with 30% of the market in Spain, right? So I have been recommending Carlos for more than 3 years with stellar reviews. Everyone is extremely happy. So definitely get in contact with him. Go on SpainGuru.es/health insurance, fill the form, get a non-binding quote. It is absolutely free to engage with him and just ask him how much to be covered by private health insurance, okay? And think about it, okay? And shop around, compare with others, and I'm telling you, you're gonna go back to Carlos because he's fantastic, okay? And also, this is of course not a requirement. I personally have public healthcare system and private healthcare system. I have articles there with my own personal experiences here in Spain, and I highly recommend you having coverage of both if you have, of course, the means to have them, okay? But private health insurance here in Spain is not expensive compared to other countries. Compared to the States, it's a fraction of the cost, okay, with a high coverage. So definitely there are pros for both systems. And in my opinion, the best is to combine both, okay? I'm not talking about the requirements. I'm talking about just my personal recommendations so that you are well covered, okay, from the health perspective in Spain. Now, let's talk about more stuff. Entry stamps, apostles, translations, okay? So you will have to prove that you enter Spain on a certain date. For that, you will need a passport entry stamp. Now, they're rolling out the EES system, entry exit system, okay, for the Schengen country border, Schengen countries. Schengen is a 29 group of countries in the European continent that is internally borderless. So when you go from inside to outside of Schengen, you will face immigration control. Now it's by passport stamps, but now with this new system, they will just scan your face, fingerprints, etc. Okay, and it will count as a passport stamp, let's say. Apostles needed for official documents, as we said. Sworn translation, be careful. You need sworn translators appointed by the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. The curriculum doesn't need. It needs just a normal translation. And you need to fully complete and sign your application forms. And be careful because any single mistake can lead to a delay. Okay, so you have to be very meticulous. Now, a lot of people ask, can I also provide savings? Because maybe I fall a little bit short of income requirements. So can I complete those with savings? So yes, you can. And there's no general rule about how much percentage you can provide as savings. But that percentage should not be more than 10, 15% of the total financial threshold. It can, let's say, become bigger of a fraction of a percentage, the more dependents you're applying for, okay? So if you're bringing multiple dependents, they're more lenient towards accepting more savings, okay? And also when you're self-employed with variable month income, also can also help. But it's important that you understand that this is a visa that should be based on active income, okay? Now, when you provide proof of this income, bank documents must be stamped and signed, okay? In most cases, they will want to see that it is officially provided by the banks, right? Not all the banks can provide this type of documents and everything will be fine. But if you can get them stamped and signed, then great, okay? And everything has to be under your name. You can use fixed term deposits or investment accounts as long as you have liquid access to your money and your funds without penalties and immediate access. So if there is any doubt about this, providing a certificate by the financial institution or of your bank that expresses this is important, okay? And that you show proof of ownership and access to all these funds. It is also very important, okay? So this slide, actually, I already commented about it, okay? But it adds something about registering as Autónomo. If you register too early, it may disqualify your visa or affect tax residency. And if you register too late, can result in fines or loss of health coverage. This is important, okay? So probably I need to consolidate this slide with the previous one. What slide is this one? 44, okay? For the next version, I will improve this. And also a lot of people ask, what are the pros and cons of applying from within Spain? You know, this visa is versatile. You can do it from Spain or from abroad. Now let's talk about the pros, okay, of applying from Spain. First of all, you enter Spain as a tourist, as long as you can enter Spain as a tourist, okay, because not all passport holders can enter Spain as tourists without a Schengen visa, right? For example, Filipinos need to obtain a Schengen visa to enter the Schengen area in order to apply for a digital nomad visa. Therefore, most Filipino applicants, that there are many, will apply from the consulates abroad, from the consulates in Philippines, okay? Because they saved the step of obtaining a Schengen visa to enter the Schengen area, right? Now, if you're American, UK, Australian, etc., you don't need a Schengen visa. You can stay in the Schengen area for up to 90 days on a 180-day rolling period. Okay, this is the 180-day rule, right? So you need to apply from within this period of 90 days that you can be in Spain, right? It is faster to apply from Spain because there's no appointment that you need to schedule, whereas from a consulate, you need to schedule an appointment, and that's a huge bottleneck. Okay, so you enter Spain with a digital certificate that you need to have, or the person who applies in your behalf must have, okay, can apply 1 minute after entering Spanish soil, okay, at the UGE portal online. But you need to provide proof of entry by showing your passport, digitally showing your passport. And they have to be able to see when you enter Spain and that you are in Spain when you have applied. The process is more streamlined if you do it from Spain, and consulates are even more erratic, and interpretations can vary widely. So be careful with that. Greater control over your move, people say, because you can settle your housing, schools when you're moving with kids, logistics while you're waiting for approval. So this is not dead time. You can, work towards settling in Spain. Easier family reunification later. Once you're approved, family members can join as dependents. Approval with an indefinite contract can grant residence for 3 years instead of 1. We saw that. But there are some cons. There's a strict 90-day window in which you can apply. So you apply, maybe you get denied. Be careful because you need to have days left in order to reapply. So be careful with that. And entry proof is required, as we said before. Visa starts immediately. And also entry proof. This is also a discussion, right? What happens if you enter Spain from another Schengen country? You won't see immigration control authorities when you enter Spain. For example, you drive from France to Spain by land. Where's your Spanish stamp? There's no Spanish stamp. Maybe you enter, you've flown from New York City to Frankfurt, and then you get a stamp in Frankfurt or EES, a scan, but then you enter Spain later on. Authorities need to see the entry in Spain. So it is not very clear. There is a solution, and I have many articles about this, which is going to a national police station, show proof of your entry in Spain. You have up to 72 hours to have this from your entry in Spain, and get signed a declaración de entrada, which is a one-paper document that you show when you get your DA appointment, proving that you enter Spain on a certain date. Okay, so that's also a possibility. Okay. Remember that when you apply from Spain and your visa is granted, your visa starts immediately, okay, from the day of granting. So when you get your residency card, even if it's many weeks afterwards, usually the start date of your TA card should be the date in which your visa was granted when applied from Spain, right? So be careful with that. And yes, if you apply from Spain, the appeal process maybe is not the best option, but you need to reapply and you need to have days left. I have asked people what they did, okay, in a poll in the Spain Guru's Digital Nomad Visa group, and about 80% are applying from Spain versus 20%, 22% to be precise.
Just a quick moment. Over 60% of you watching right now aren't subscribed. That's a lot of people getting value without hitting that button. If my videos have helped you understand Spain's immigration process, visas, or life here even just once, please subscribe now. I'm working hard to reach 10,000 subscribers by the end of 2025, and your click truly makes a difference. Thanks so much. Now, let's keep going.
Applying from their home consulates. The timeline is easy. You prepare your documents, okay, allow time, okay, weeks. For example, certificate of coverage, it takes 4 to 8 weeks in the States. You need to get all the documentation before flying to Spain. Make sure that you have everything in place, and then fly to Spain. Submit it, and you await resolution. It's quite faster than in the consulates, okay? And once you receive it, you start your residency, and then potentially have to register for Autónomo, Social Security, taxes, and get your residency card. There are more steps, actually, when you enter Spain. There are more steps. We're just focusing in the visa right now, but if we go to screen sharing here and you go to Spain Guru, okay, you can see here, for example, your step-by-step move to Spain checklist. And this is applicable for any type of visa. But generally, you can start preparing for your trip to Spain about 12 months before. You have here the different stages. And you have videos, articles who explain everything, webinars you can join, budget tools so you can calculate your budget for living in Spain, choose where you live in Spain, join the different communities, all right? Or for example, after arrival, all the steps for arriving in Spain, right? Declare your entry, empadronamiento, get your TA card, open Spanish bank account, phone service, etc., digital certificate, etc. So worth looking at that section on Spenguru.es, which is of course free, my friends. Okay, for you to use. Other people charge for that. So yeah, definitely worth spending some time in there. And these two, be inspired of the things you need. Of course, it is always a work in progress. I still need to add, for example, to get your international driver license. Okay, for people who want to drive in Spain for the first 6 months, an international driving license is required also, and then they need to get a Spanish driving license. Okay, but this is not in the first steps to arrive to Spain, and I still need to add it. It's in my mind, somewhere in the list. But yeah, working on it. Now, working with individuals. What if clients are in companies? Okay, so this also can be possible, right? You can apply even if your clients are individuals or sole traders. You need to prove that relationship is stable, long-term, and remote, and you will have to include invoices, proof of regular payments, written confirmation that the client about the work you do, and for multiple smaller clients, show consistent income across several months and avoid contracts that suggest you are doing work for Spanish-based individuals unless clearly allowed. So the way you frame the information is also important. Now, people working for NGOs, this also is possible, okay, and it's acceptable if they operate like a company, showing consistent activity, legal status, and financial transactions. So it's possible, definitely. And once you get your residency in Spain, your visa, okay, you need to obtain your tarjeta de identidad extranjero, or TA card, residency card. The big bottleneck here is getting appointments at the national police stations or foreign offices, right? So count on it. Valencia is a very, very common place where people are going, and now it is very, very difficult. It takes months to get your appointment for the TA card. And don't forget that it doesn't stop your legal status. Okay, you are a resident in Spain, right? It's just that you don't have the physical residency card, and once you obtain it, it will show the date in which your residency started. Okay, so you need to plan accordingly for potential renewals, right? What you can do in order to obtain appointments, okay, check appointments site daily, okay, the police appointments, especially early mornings, be flexible, maybe travel to nearby towns, some other cities with police stations that can offer this type of appointments within the same province, potentially using a relocation expert, okay. Actually, on Spain Guru, I recently added this service via partner services here, immigration, TA card, yes, with entre trámites. So you have here identity card, empadronamiento certificate, etc. Of course, these are private services. You can do this all by yourself officially, okay? But definitely, if you want someone else to do it, it is a service. It is a paid service. It's quite tedious, so I just offer the service in case you need it. But definitely, you can do it yourself if you have the time and will. Now, there is a little hack there that in Madrid, in Barcelona, we said that in 99% of cases they will require an empadronamiento. But what if you don't have an empadronamiento? This is common also. It's hard. There's a housing crisis in Spain. Not every rental contract is valid for empadronamiento in all the city halls. Sometimes you will not get an empadronamiento. So for this, there is a little empadronamiento hack that you would know if you follow Spain Guru's YouTube channel, if you subscribe, right? Because you can travel to Madrid, stay one night in a hotel or at a friend's house or Barcelona, get your appointment in those cities, and they will not ask you an empadronamiento, and you will get your TA card. Okay, just read the information. You can have here the link or the QR code. Otherwise, you will have to follow the TA normal standard procedure. I also have an article about this on how to get your residency card and TA process, okay? But of course, you have official information out there that you can read. Now let's talk about taxes and social security. Social security costs, what you will pay in year one and versus year two. And there's an important news that came out yesterday or the day before. So if you register as self-employed or autónomo, You will have to pay Social Security and quarterly taxes and yearly taxes. Of course, for the first year, you will pay a flat rate contribution of 80 euros, about 80, 85 euros, depending on the region. Okay. Some regions you will get those paid back for the first year. Madrid and Andalusia, for example, quota cero is called. And year two, the contribution will raise according to the income on the first year. Okay. Typical range will be around 300 euros per month. If you're applying as digital nomad, you need to comply with the minimum financial threshold. So we'll go to 300 euros, more or less. Okay, Social Security. And what it includes, you're just not paying for nothing. You will get access to Spanish public health assistance, subsidized medicines. This is important, okay, because subsidized medicines also is a big deal. Now, retirement also, and disability coverage, parental leave and sickness benefits. Okay, so it's important that you get that coverage. However, big news here. Okay, new slide here. Social Security contributions will rise 2026, 2027, and 2028. Okay, and you can see an article that I just published this morning, and I will record a video very, very shortly, because the government, our loved government, who is looking for our welfare and well-being, is raising the contributions of Social Security, especially for the for everyone. Okay, even if you're making 670 euros per month, your quota will raise 17 euros in 2026, 35 in 2027, 52 in 2028 per month. Okay, but there on the red square you can see the minimum threshold 2,760 euros. The quota in 2026 will go to 445. So if you're paying 300, it will go to 445 per month. Okay, up to 530 until 2028. Okay, so there you can see the raises. But if you want to see a more visual chart, this is what will happen for people who are applying as digital nomads, right? Where you were paying 429, it will go to about 600. If you were paying 600, it will go to 800. So for higher income earners, about 2,500 euros more per year in Social Security contributions, supposedly enabling you to get higher pensions later on. But of course, until you get the pension, you don't know if that is true, actually, right? Well, that's my personal opinion. Of course, there are, of course, they will pay you the pension. Let's touch wood, as we say in Spanish. Now, let's talk about the Spanish progressive tax system. And this is more about the income tax for tax authorities. We're talking about Social Security contributions, different story, okay, but also paying. Now, about the income tax, this is the ordinary or general regime. It goes and works with progressive brackets that range from 19% to 47%. This is, for example, employment income, okay? Common question is, you can see there is the bracket, the fifth bracket, 45%, right? For 60,000 to 300,000 euros. If I make 100,000 euros income of taxable income, will I pay 45%? This is also a nice way to see how the tax brackets work, how they calculate it, right? As you say, like, oh, I make 100K, I will be paying for 45%. It's not true. You will pay less, okay? You will pay an effective tax rate of 36%. Because the way it works is that you progressively increase the tax rate on your income. For the first 12,450 euros, you will pay 19%. For the following almost 8K, you will pay 24%. For 15K, you will pay 30%, etc., etc. Therefore, you will be paying a sort of median or average of the effective tax rate, right? So for 100K taxable income without deductions or allowances or without deducting expenses or anything, illustrative purposes, ballpark figures, you'll be paying around 36%. And if you calculate this in the same terms, if you make 30K per year, you will pay 24% effective tax rate on your income. For 40K, 26%. For 50K, 29%. For 60K, 30%. For 70K, 32%. For 100K, 36%, as we saw, right? So it is not low, but it's not 45% for 100K, right? Now, the tax calendar for autónomos, right, for self-employed, remember that you also have to pay on a quarterly basis, right? So every quarter, you will have to file income tax. You will have to pay about 20%, okay, in advance for the income that you had that quarter. And then the annual filing on June 30th, the following year, you will pay the difference. Okay, so if you were paying 20% on your income on a quarterly basis in 2025, when 30th of June of 2026, you will be paying the annual income tax of 2025, right? You pay 20% of all your income. Well, you will be paying a higher rate. Okay, for your general income in 2025, you will pay only the difference, let's say, right? Because you already advanced those payments the previous year on a quarterly basis. You will have to file VAT, okay, and also annual VAT, which is at the beginning of the year, okay. Also, once you become a Spanish tax resident, there is the 720 form, okay? This is a declaration of the existence of overseas assets by category if any of those categories are over 50,000 euros. For example, bank accounts. If the total amount of money inside your bank accounts outside of Spain is 50,000 euros or more, you will have to disclose the existence of those bank accounts. For example, or properties. If you own a property in the UK and that property is more than 50,000 euros, you have to declare it. Okay, this is a declaration. You just file and you inform the existence of these assets and rights held abroad by December 31st of the previous tax year. Yes, and the 720 form deadline is March 31st. Okay, always use a gestor or tax advisor for this. It's very important in my opinion for the reasons I exposed you before. How much will my net salary be? Okay, so if you add income tax and you add social security contributions, and this slide was created before the news for the increase of the social security contributions. You can see starting at 2,750 euros, you will have a total deduction of 31%. If you make 10K per month, about 39%, right? If you want to know more about taxes, join my free Spanish taxes webinar that I hold every 15 days. It is free and you get a recording. Okay. Now let's talk about the renewal of this visa. Remember, now they treat this almost as an initial application. Okay. So let's talk about the duration and the renewal timeline. Okay. So for the initial visa approval, if you apply from outside of Spain, maximum 1 year. If you apply from in Spain with an indefinite contract, 3 years. Okay. After 3 years, you can renew for 2 more years. Also, a deadline could be the certificate of coverage. If the certificate of coverage ends after 2 years, then you will get your visa for 2 years, for example, right? In Spain, if you apply from Spain. So, important deadlines. If you got your visa from outside of Spain, you have officially up to 30 days to get your residency card. That never happens, okay? This is important to know, okay? You have to know it, but don't have a headache or be worried if that doesn't happen in 30 days, okay? It's important to understand that the renewal period, depending when your expiration date of your residency card is, the renewal can start 60 days before the expiration date. And it's important and it's recommended that you do it 60 days before, okay? Because that will enable you enough time to have enough time if any problem arises. Never wait. You can also do it up to 90 days after expiration date, okay? Which is, let's say, a grace period, but it's never good to wait till then, okay? So don't wait until the last minute for that. Something important, if you plan to obtain the Spanish citizenship, then by residency, okay, by residency. If you're from any of those countries in red, just after 2 years of legal residency in Spain, and the digital nomad visa counts for this, you can be eligible for applying for the Spanish citizenship. Just make sure to not leave Spain more than 90 days per each of those 2 years, okay? So you only have 3 months per each year of being out of Spain. Now, if you're a holder of a passport of any of the gray countries, normally the residency period is 10 years. Now, if you marry a Spaniard, it can go down to 1 year, okay? Or if you're a Sephardi, Jew, etc., etc. But generally, those are the cases. So for the holders of passports of those red countries, it's better, in my opinion, to go for the Spanish citizenship, which comes faster. The eligibility comes faster than the long-term residency, which is 5 years, right? This is for citizenship. It's important. And recently we have an important ruling confirming all this. I have an article and a video on Spain Guru. If you're in this situation, send me an email and I will send you the link to this article. Definitely important that you have it, that you know it, okay? What's different when you renew your visa? You must still meet all the income, work, and legal requirements. Updated income proof for the past 6 to 12 months, updated criminal record certificate from Spain, proof of continued remote work and business activity, confirmation of Spanish address and up-to-date padrón and empadronamiento, and inform UGE within 30 days of any changes, right? This is important, right? If you lose your contract, your main contract form, your initial application, your change employers, etc., UGE needs to be informed. Common issues. Income drops below the required level, freelancers fail to show consistent activity, delays with paperwork or expired documents, new apostille requirements, this is important, gaps in health coverage, as we mentioned before, gaps in residency permit, must have 5 years of continued legal residency in Spain for long-term residency application, okay, and complying with the minimum stay requirements for long-term residency, and what I mentioned about the 90 days maximum outside of Spain for 2-year fast-track beneficiaries for the Spanish citizenship. Some tips for a smooth renewal: keep your documents organized from day one, income statements, invoices, etc., and your social security payment records if you are self-employed. Monitor your income to ensure you meet the threshold every month. Update your padrón, okay, because your empadronamiento usually is valid for only 3 months. Set reminders to begin your renewal process at least 60 days before expiration date of your TA card. Gather all your documents with several months in advance and get new background check from Spain, okay? Try not to get legal criminal records in Spain, like driving under the influence, etc. This could lead to denial. What to do when your certificate of coverage or A1 is expiring, okay? Maximum usually is up to 2 years. When it expires, you will have 3 options. Apply for a new renewal of this certificate of coverage in your country, which we've seen in the groups that is hard to obtain, very, very hard, especially in the UK. Or then you have other pathways like switching to Autónomo and registering in the Spanish Social Security, which maybe stops your eligibility for Beckham Law if you're a beneficiary of Beckham Law. Convince your employer to register in Spain Social Security, okay, which can keep your eligibility to Beckham Law, but highly unlikely. Leave Spain temporarily, which may reset the clock for long-term residency, okay, because then you would have an space interrupted residency periods. And consider immigration pathways like arraigo. This is when you're, let's say, illegal, okay, or irregular, put it the way you want, okay, you don't have any valid, but you have 2 years in Spain and you can prove it, okay, you can have been legally in Spain for 2 years, then now you can apply for arraigo, okay, so you get a residency permit via arraigo. Switching to non-lucrative visa, some people say that now is not possible, but I will soon interview Ainhoa Manero of Stern Abogados and will explain that it is still possible to modify from digital nomad visa to non-lucrative visa. Getting a ordinary work permit, working as autónomo, okay, or for a company who sponsors you. And yeah, have in mind that when your certificate of coverage expires, you could be denied if you didn't choose the right pathway, right, to continue your residency. Okay, so it's important. So remember that Spenguru.es, you can use it for absolutely free. Before we go to the Q&A session, Spenguru, you can join my weekly newsletter that I send every Monday. You can watch my YouTube channel with more than 1,000 videos, 7,200 subscribers, blog with more than 2,000 articles, Facebook groups with aggregated 150,000 members, from which the Digital Nomad Visa group has 18.4 thousand members. And here you can see it is a very, very highly active group, okay, where everyone can comment and ask for advice, etc., etc. So yeah, definitely join the group if you haven't done so yet, because it will give you a lot of information and first-hand experiences, okay? Join my other webinars there: non-lucrative visa, Q&A session, taxes, moving to Spain, alternatives for golden visa outside of Spain, like Portugal and Greece. So yeah, definitely stay informed using Spenguru for free, or engage with my experienced partners. Highly recommend that you use immigration experts and tax advisors, personally vetted by me. Most of them I have also personally used them for myself, so I can, you know, talk also from a personal experience, okay, for immigration. I'm originally from Argentina. I got the citizenship here in Spain using Stern Abogados, for example, which is my primary recommended immigration lawyers, but not the only ones. I use, you know, tax advisors from my recommendations and tax accountants. Okay, in this case, I use Tax Down, for example, and health insurance as well. So yeah, definitely, yeah, take a look to it and see what you can use from there. You can always contact me on at hello@spenguru.es. I always answer my emails, point you in the right direction, give you articles, information, communities to join, videos to watch. Yeah, definitely. Consider me as your man here in Spain if you need me for anything. And let's go to the Q&A session. And if you need to leave before, you can always leave a review on Trustpilot. There at the top, there's a green bar with a red button that will redirect you to Trustpilot, where you can leave a beautiful review to help others find this content and also motivate me to continue creating it. So let's go to the questions. I appreciate it. First of all, everyone joining today. I know it's very early for many people to join, but thank you so much for being here. Remember that I will send you a recording later on to YouTube. Please subscribe to the YouTube channel. Give a like to the video if you learn something from this information. Please give it a like. It really helps. You don't know how much it helps to get a little like there. You will see that my videos have hundreds of views, sometimes thousands of views, okay, and still get like just a very little amount of likes there, but still get comments. So it's not that they're bad. It's just like people forget, they just watch the video and never give the like to the video. It really helps. So yeah, definitely. Let's go with the questions. How do you get bank docs stamped and signed in the US? This is not a normal thing anymore, especially for online only banks. Definitely. It will be impossible for you to get stamped documents, and you will have to make the case for the authorities that those documents are official and should be accepted by them, because there's no possibility from you to obtain the certificates in the format that they want. Okay, so this is the situation. Potentially, I think immigration experts, what they do is they bring those bank statements or docs or certificates and they notarize them so that there is a signature there from a notary public from the States, for example, that make those statements look more official, okay, or at least the summary pages, right? So this is what the authorities want to see, in my opinion. Remember that I'm not an immigration lawyer, and this is not legal advice. Always consult with an immigration expert knowledgeable about this specific visa. You can find them on spenguru.es. But yeah, definitely that would be my answer to your question. Thank you so much for asking. Jacob, thank you for joining today. For the university degree, does it make a difference if you submit your bachelor's or your master's degree? In this case, the apostille of your master's degree would be more difficult to obtain as it comes from a third country. Right, so that's a good question. I think I have my own opinion about this, but I'm not very sure. I prefer that you ask this in the Spenguru's non-lucrative digital nomad visa group. I think it's okay if you submit the bachelor's degree. As I mentioned in this presentation, it has to match your role, the job that you're applying with, okay, and that will be, in my opinion, enough. I believe, but I could be wrong. That's a great question, and if you ask it in the group and people comment what was successful and everything, I will also learn from that experience. So let's go with the next question. What did I do? So here, right. In the case of a contract that is renewed early, then it does not make a difference if the application is made from Spain or from a consulate abroad, as the duration of the visa permit will always be tied to the contract. As far as I understand, the duration of the visa permit would always be tied to the contract. Yes, in my opinion. Not legal advice. Dan, thank you for joining today and asking something. I sent the documents to the US government to be apostille, and 4 days later, the government shut down. Yes, I heard that. It is still shut, and I'm concerned that it won't open in time for me to apply. Do you have any advice for a situation like this? So I understand that you are not in the US. This, you're applying from Spain, or you are or you are preparing to apply for Spain and bring the apostles. Concerned that it won't open in time for me to apply. I mean, these situations in general, okay? I would say that generally for this situation, not only for this procedure, but for any procedure in Spain. An example also, Ley de Memoria Democrática for Spanish ancestry. It is finishing now on the 22nd of October. You apply what you have. And if you can apply, your documents are being processed. And you know there will be friction, potentially a rejection, potentially. Or maybe you're asked to supply the correct documentation. Yes, or you know that. So you, let's say that you supply now, you submit now your documentation, and then you provide to your file the new documentation when you can do it. Okay, but you already applied, right? This could be potentially a possibility. Okay, I may be saying something silly. Okay, maybe an immigration lawyer will tell me no, you need to have everything in place before submitting. So but yeah, I mean, this is very strange situation, and from the U.S. authorities, they should be able to provide you with the necessary apostille documents. And unfortunately, I don't know, if you can't obtain it, then the quick straight question will be like, look, apply with all the documentation, right? If you can't obtain it, unfortunately, you can't. You will be rejected. But there is the option also about applying without all the documentation, but applying, okay, and potentially the authorities will not deny you, but they will tell you, look, this is missing. If you supply it, then it's we can continue with the process. Okay, so yeah. The COC asks for the company's Spanish company name and address are registered in Spain. So what would one put in that box of the COC requests? Okay, so what I understand is one of the big changes is that you can include a residential address now in Spain. Potentially, if you're applying with a lawyer, maybe the lawyer can, or an immigration expert can supply a residency address in Spain. Hola, Bruno. Thank you for your time and all your work with Spain Guru. You're welcome. For a UN contractor that works remotely for the UN full-time, is it considered an autónomo or an employee? The terms of this contract stipulate that the person is responsible for paying their own taxes and social security wherever they're living as applicable. So I understand, well, maybe the UN is a very specific organization that has a special status, but you will be paying taxes and social security. You're an autónomo. Actually, one of the co-founders of Spain Guru, Cristina Sampson, she works for the United Nations. Okay, has been working for several years. So here we go, and she's autónomo, right? So if we go to Spain Guru here and we go to About Us, yes, here's Cristina. Okay, she's Filipino US, born in Los Angeles, and actually you can consult with her. Here we go to immigration, we go to expert consultations, moving to Spain with Cristina Sampson. You can talk with her as well, so you can get a consultation with her if you have anything specific. But yeah, what I understand is that the UN, at least she works as a contractor, as an autónomo here in Spain. That's what I understand. Right, let's go with more questions. I have established an SL company in Spain on November 2024. Can I apply DNV from Spain as self-employed autónomo to my company? I think an expert should clarify that for you. Unfortunately, I don't know exactly the situation. It's not a very common situation, really. For me, I haven't seen people asking this before, so I'm very, very, very sure. Fortunately, sorry, I wish I could help you more. Does a W-2 employee for a small company in the US make it possible to get the DNV? Now, yes. If you are able to comply with all the requirements, 1 year existence, remote work, a certificate of coverage, etc. It doesn't change that there is this a small company or it's a big company in the US. But if you comply with the financial thresholds, your own financial threshold for the visa, the timings for applying, etc. Now it is possible, definitely. I established a company in Spain. Okay, sorry, this was the same question. Now I have here. And hi, Bruno. Thank you so much for the extremely helpful session. Thank you very much for you to join it. Always leave a review if you're happy with the information I share. Sorry to insist so much, but really, reviews are important. I've seen conflicting information online. Do you need to have a NIE or a TIE before you apply for the DNV? I am a W-2 employee with a COC applying from within Spain, right? So you don't need to have any of those when you apply for the digital nomad visa, okay? So the NIE, if we go to home sharing, screen share, if you do like Spain Guru, NIE, TIE, differences between NIE and TIE card, right? So they're not the same. So the NIE is the number, it's just a number, okay? And when they grant you the digital nomad visa, they will assign you this number that will be your identification number as a foreign person for the rest of your life, okay? So I was living, for example, as Italian passport holder for many years in Spain, and I had a NIE number, right? But then you will have to obtain the TIE card, the residency card, which is the plastic card, like this. It looks like this, yes? And this is the TIE card that shows the NIE number here that you got assigned when you got your visa granted, okay? And this TIE card, you obtain it once you get your digital nomad visa granted. Yes, as we said, depending if you got it in a consulate and your visa is already valid, or you got it at the UGE, then you start trying to get appointments at the police station, and it can take weeks, if not months, depending where, right? So yeah, that would be the situation with the NIE and the TIE, right? I don't think I left any questions without answering or trying to answer. I really, really appreciate that you guys joined today. Spain Guru. I will really, here in the chat box here, here's the link to Spain Guru, to Trustpilot. Thank you so much, Dan, Jacob. Thank you, everybody, for joining today. I will send you a recording of this video. Always, you can reach out to me at hello@spainguru.es. Let me write it down here. I always answer my emails, maybe not the same day, but I do answer them. And yeah, stay in touch and see you around. Have a wonderful week, and I wish you luck if you're applying soon for this visa, gathering documents, etc. I wish you good luck with that, and stay in touch. Take care. Have a wonderful week, and see you around. Goodbye.